Yoga teaches us to cure what need not be endured and to endure what cannot be cured. I'm Daniel Bradley, and this is In 4 Weeks, where every month I take on a new challenge that's helping me as a man and a father become healthy, wealthy, and wise. And so this is definitely in the healthy category. This month I'm focusing on yoga. Last month was the digital detox, and now I'm 2 weeks into a 4-week yoga challenge. So this is going to be all about what I've learned and a few of my takeaways from this week as I dive deeper into the practice of yoga and how it can be a lifelong benefit. Yoga teaches us to cure what need not be endured and to endure what cannot be cured. What initially attracted me to yoga and what keeps me coming back to the practice is an important question. And that's the first question I want to ask you is, what brought you interest to coming into this yoga practice? So I used to work at a climbing gym. It was my first job in high school, and it was my predominant coming of age experience. It was a dojo of physical, social, and spiritual challenge. It was a physical place that I could go to work out and also work out the storm of emotions that comes with adolescence and being a teenager. I haven't been to a climbing gym that didn't offer yoga classes, so they often go hand in hand. There are certainly physical benefits. It improves flexibility, strength, posture. My core after doing yoga is awakened. It's definitely generates blood flow and strengthens those core muscles and connective tissue. Also, there's a noticeable impact on mental health and emotional well-being. And this is something I really want to stress, is that yoga provides a great deal of stress reduction, increased mindfulness, and emotional balance for me. But always the add-on activity after a hard day of climbing, it's always something that after climbing hard as a teenager, I may do some yoga to loosen back up, to be able to get the blood flowing back in my limbs and to really just be ready to drive home at the end of the day. It was never first. It's always been a restorative practice or something for recovery. So I could go on a long run and then maybe it would be sort of the way that I would stretch is in some of these yoga forms, but never really the primary thing. I've never considered what would it feel like as the center of my focus. This next day, the quote that stuck out to me from the book that I've been reading, there's a link down in the description, Light on Yoga. It's essentially what they call like the Bible of modern yoga. And this quote here is, "Yoga is a light which once lit will never dim. The better your practice, the brighter your flame." And it drove home the second question here. In what ways does yoga help you connect with your breath and find a sense of calm and stillness? If climbing is my athletic first love that I just talked about in the previous question, running is a close second. I used to hate running. It was torture, and it was used as punishment for failing in sports or in gym class growing up. And I think a lot of us had that experience. In 7th grade, I ran my first sub 6-minute mile. So that was an accomplishment for me and something that when you're young, you can just kind of muscle through that. And I nearly blacked out. My vision was fading 3/4 of the way through this mile, and rounding that last lap, it was the haze of not enough blood flow and not enough oxygen getting in, because I just had unconsciously started holding my breath just to muscle through it. It was only later that I realized that I was habitually holding my breath under any stressful activity. When the going got tough, I tensed up and I just muscled through it. And that's a normal thing for a lot of people that are immature in their physical awareness of their body. This is wildly common, and it's very liberating when you learn to control and maximize your breath. This was my second realization through this week. Breath work is central to the practice of yoga. And here's some common outcomes or experiences when I'm focusing on my breath work. The first being deepening breath awareness. And that's cultivating conscious breathing techniques to calm the nervous system and bring focus to the present moment. So that could be while you're running, that could be while you're sitting, you could be in a conversation or a meeting, or you could be in a very difficult position in your yoga practice. The second one is pranayama practices. That's Pranayama. It's a lot of A's. And that's exploring specific breathing exercises like alternating nostril breathing, or to enhance relaxation and balance your energy. If you're a runner and you practice yoga, do you find that breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth is more or less calming? So I know that a lot of people say if you need more energy, let's say your energy level is a baseline of just 0. This is just normal sitting calmly in a corner of a room. And if you need more energy, like you're, running a sprint, then some people say you breathe in through your mouth and out through your nose. And the opposite is true, is if you want to lower your heart rate or you want to calm back down or maybe run more consistently, like if I were running a marathon, I breathe in through my nose and out through my mouth. And then what's funny is I've seen the opposite as well. I've seen people say, oh, that's true, but it's reversed. And so I think maybe it's true for different people. I mean, that's something to experiment with, and doing it during yoga is a great time to experiment with your breath and to find those rhythms and which works best for you. And so finally, the third, where I'm talking about breath work being central to the practice of yoga, is that mind-body connection. And this is something that we're losing more and more. I found that last month during the digital detox, and you can check on some of those videos or go through the course through the links down below, but that mind-body connection is being detethered with our reliance on social media, technology, smartphones. It kind of gets in the way of that. And so recognizing this intimate relationship between breath, your thoughts, your emotions, your heart rate, your physical sensations, and using breath as an anchor for stability and serenity is something that is great to work on that breath work and to explore it. The third day this week, and the quote from, again, the book down below, Light on Yoga, the hardness of a diamond is part of its usefulness, but it is true value is in the light that shines through it. And so this was a little bit more heady, but it brought me to this question: how does yoga make you feel physically, mentally, and emotionally? It reminded me of the story Sisyphus. He was condemned to roll a rock up to the top of a mountain, only to have the rock roll back down to the bottom every time he reached the top. So day after day, week after week, he would roll the rock up to the top of the mountain, and the gods cursed him to have it roll back down. And this is a Greek myth that speaks to our human distaste for futile labor, for toiling, for spinning our wheels, so to speak. And most projects start this way for me. This is why it brought to my mind right around when I feel like it's futile, when I feel like I'm spinning my wheels, when I feel like this is a waste of time or energy, right before I experience the best parts of life, breakthrough and progress. And so progress feels like the physical. It's energizing, relaxing. It's a sense of lightness in the body. That's what progress feels like. And this is often how I feel through and after some yoga practice. And so that's the physical aspect. Now, the mental, for me, yoga and makes me feel calm, focused, and gives me a clarity of thought. And so that's the second aspect. And then finally, progress in the emotional world feels like an increased self-awareness, emotional stability, and a sense of inner peace. And so the real challenge is showing up and showing up again the next day. So I'll say that one more time. The real challenge here is showing up and then showing up again the next day. And that's my really big takeaway for that next day in this week's journey. following that, the fourth day in this past week of experiencing yoga and diving deeper into this practice, this quote came up: "Do not aim low, you will miss the mark. Aim high, and you'll be on a threshold of bliss." So the question that was brought to mind was, how can you incorporate the principles of yoga, such as nonviolence and truthfulness, into your daily life off the mat? So maybe this is more of an ethical argument here or something to reflect on. And it brought to mind this story of when my son, Luke, who was a 2-year-old, now he's 3, and he's just overflowing with imagination. He is just he's just a fount of something crazy and interesting is going to come out of his mouth every time. And he especially loves animals, and especially stuffed animals. And there's a primal directive, a sort of conscious parenting principle that to protect and cultivate imagination in our kids. Sometimes that means immersing yourself in their worlds. He's got a stuffed animal and he's like, this isn't a dog, this is a whale. And so you have 2 options. You can try to prove to Luke that he's wrong and this is in fact a whale or in fact a dog, or you can dive into the world of this dog-shaped whale and go for an imaginary swim with your child and let yourself be immersed in their imagination and stretch those boundaries. And so it's about the relationship itself. It's about what's going on between the 2 people that's most important. And that kindness and the compassion that shows up through nonviolence and truthfulness can show up in little nuanced ways of really meeting another person where they're at. And so it's about the relationship and how you cultivate values of compassion and truth. So there's 3 ways that I wanted to highlight this for that approach and where we can explore this through our yoga practice. And so the first one is cultivating compassion and kindness towards yourself and others, promoting nonviolence in 3 ways: in your thought, in your words, in your actions. And so this is something that as you engage in your practice, you can really, sometimes things just come up in your mind. I know that many people, this is a recurring theme. Instead of just dismissing thoughts, feeling, memories that show up when you're practicing yoga, instead try to cultivate a habit of receiving those with compassion in your thoughts, words, and actions, and really play those out in your mind while you're going through the postures and positions of your yoga practice. So this could be a way for you to sort of game play out how you would react in certain situations, or maybe think about positive and compassionate ways that you could have reacted in the past. And importantly, like having compassion for yourself, because maybe you're working on something internally where you maybe made the wrong decision or reacted poorly. And so this is an opportunity to cultivate a compassionate response, not just for others, but for yourself. And so the second way that we can cultivate the values of compassion and truth in our relationships through our yoga practice is through honoring truthfulness and authenticity in communication and interactions with yourself and with others. And so that's a mouthful, but honoring truthfulness and authenticity for me simply looks like just being clear with where my limitations are in yoga practice. So I have this wild bell curve of flexibility when it comes to my hamstrings. And when I try to touch my toes just a few days ago, I was very successful. Now, a few weeks ago, it was an awful experience. And a lot of that comes from sitting at a desk and during my day job and on my commute and in the evenings. And that really tightens up my hamstrings. And honoring the reality of where I'm at that moment, waking up in the morning and acknowledging my fatigue in a way that is really honoring my authentic self and what I'm bringing to the mat, and being truthful about that is something that is going to be a good practice for when I'm having a conversation with my wife, and honoring what emotions and thoughts and what I'm bringing to the table and trying to bring my full self to the mat and being whole in that way. The third way that yoga is a laboratory for experimenting with our relationship and how to cultivate compassion and truth would be through mindful choices. And this really shows up in making conscious decisions that are aligned with values and ethical principles in daily life. So we've talked about honoring the truthfulness and authenticity in ourselves and others. We've talked about cultivating compassion and kindness through our thoughts, words, and actions. And so this is where they really come together and really how we make our choices, making conscious decisions aligned with values and ethical principles. And I talked a lot about this in the previous month through my digital detox, but those conscious decisions become very real when you stop using some of the crutches that show up in our everyday life. So our smartphone, I found, is a huge crutch for me personally when trying to find distractions or little hits of dopamine. And I tend to make more unconscious choices, or to just sort of eat whatever I feel like, or to wake up when I feel like, when I'm using a lot of stimuli in my life to sort of make me just kind of feel numb or just okay. And so that's maybe one thing that has brought you to this and had you watching this, was just because you found that some of the principles in yoga have really challenged the way that you view yourself and how you make your choices and what, motivates you as a person. And so making conscious decisions, cultivating compassion, and honoring that truthfulness are all three different ways that I find that are very helpful when it comes to really aiming high and being on a threshold where you're getting the most out of your yoga practice. The fifth day in this week of my experience with my yoga practice brought up this quote in my reading of Light On Yoga. Again, you can find the link down below. But this next quote: "The body is your temple. Keep it pure and clean for the soul to reside within." And it really led into this next question that I'm pondering for this day. What are your intentions and goals in your yoga practice? And so really my intentions and my goals, I found I have some assumptions at the beginning of this. I really try to have a hypothesis of where this is going to lead me, but my goals tend to form as I go through. I've put my physical body through some tough trials in my life. Before I got married, right before, my dad, my brother, and I hiked up to the top of Mount Kilimanjaro. It's the highest elevation that I've personally ever been. It's the highest peak in Africa. And it takes more than a week to slowly hike up until you get to the summit. The summit's over 19,000 feet. It's 19,000, about 344 feet at the top above sea level. Humans are miraculously adaptable. If you take it slow up that mountain, then you can survive and really thrive in the lower levels of oxygen as you go up. The air is just less dense the higher you go. But if you do it all at once, it can be deadly. If you were to go from 0 to 19,000, then your body doesn't have time to react, and you're not getting enough oxygen in your blood to supply all those vital organs. Whatever your intentions or your goals are, taking it slow will help you adapt and deepen your experience towards any one of these three possible focuses when it comes to your yoga practice. The first one I want to talk about is called cultivating self-care. And so slowly prioritizing time for self-nurturing and self-healing. And I often talk about the experience of being a dad, especially a dad of young kids. And this is very counterintuitive for someone who doesn't have a lot of personal time, cultivating that self-care. And so for me, that looks like waking up earlier. And to be vulnerable with you, I haven't been doing a great job of that, of waking up early enough to be able to having enough time for that self-care in the morning. But it is my number one goal and my number one realization through trying to get this yoga practice in every single day for this month. The second area is personal growth. And this is something that I am addicted to. And this is the purpose for this channel, to help you, and especially myself as a man and a father, grow healthy, wealthy, and wise. that is the purpose for what I'm doing, is that personal growth. And I want to do it in a way that's not just goal, just knock it down, move on to the next one, but really to have a theme where I can go deeper each month with one topic. This month it's yoga, next month it'll be something else. And I want to explore and expand the physical, mental, and spiritual boundaries of whatever that topic is that I take on. And it should be something that I can do for the rest of my life. So that's the personal growth aspect of whatever your intentions and goals are. And to take that slowly, to intentionally not just say, I'm going to do yoga until it feels good, and 6 days later move on to something else. But at least for me, devoting 4 weeks to something allows me enough time to be able to go at least one level deeper with whatever that theme is. And third is the mind-body connection. And I know I've talked a lot about that this week, but enhancing my own awareness of the mind-body connection and promoting harmony between the two has been the biggest catalyst, and it takes time. I get a sense that after just coming into towards the end of this second week today, that my sense of my body and where my mind is approaching and through and during and after a yoga practice is it's unlocking new goals and potential and enhancing my awareness of how I feel and how I'm reacting to doing this every day. But I don't really feel that harmony. It's promoting harmony between my mind and body, but really they're still struggling against each other. My hope and my assumption is that after 2 more weeks of this, I will be on a journey and see a clear path towards more harmony between where my mind is and where my body is, starting out the day, through the day, and at the end of the day. Now, coming into the weekend, I found that the yoga pose that I avoid the most is the one that I need the most. And so that's the quote for the day. The yoga pose that you avoid the most is the one that you need the most. And it brings me right into this question: how does yoga help you cultivate a sense of self-awareness and presence? And self-awareness and presence is a peak goal. It's a paradigm shifter. It's something that I want to really explore as deeply as possible during this 4-week experiment. And so the thing that I avoid the most is a difficult conversation. This is what's really brought up to the surface for me in this experience this week. Bad news is difficult for anyone to deliver, and I certainly understand that. But personally, it's torture for me. Bad news is the last thing that I want to engage with, and some of that is timing. If I can clear the air quickly and get that bad news right off my chest, I feel much better, and I will do it. I will pull that Band-Aid off. I have no problem initiating action and being forthright. However, if there are days before the bad news can be delivered, I'm a big believer in doing it in person or over the phone. And so if I can't get this person, I'm experiencing it this week. I've tried every day to try to contact this person. They're just too busy and I can't get a hold of them. I agonize about how the conversation is going to go and how they're going to react and how I'm going to feel after. And so I get a sense that this is one of my biggest growth areas personally. And yoga has helped me cultivate a sense of self-awareness and presence, because when I'm working it out on the mat, this is what's being worked out in my thoughts and feelings. And so you can be an opportunity to confront discomfort when practicing yoga on the mat. It doesn't happen all at once, but gradually and in a process that can bring healing and resilience through a few specific avenues that I'm going to unpack here. First, it's mindfulness. Now, bringing attention to the present moment and observing your thoughts, sensations, and emotions without judgment is going to be a paradigm shifter for you. So being mindful about where you are in the present moment, how you feel, what you're sensing, what you're going through, what's in your mind, what you're feeling, what your body's feeling through the experience. So that mindfulness is something that if you habitually work on that through yoga day after day, you're going to experience it throughout the rest of your day in increasing levels. And over time, it's going to unlock a lot more potential. The second is body awareness. So depending on the connection with the body through your conscious movement and your breath, you'll find that you're more aware of how your body's feeling, about your posture, about your joints, your aches, your pains, your strength that you're developing, and you deepen your consciousness of your connection with your body. And that's another way that yoga can bring an opportunity to confront areas of discomfort physically in yourself. And then, of course, mentally and emotionally, it provides a clear opportunity for self-reflection and encouraging introspection and exploration of your inner thoughts, your beliefs, and your patterns that you go through day after day. And so your yoga practice is an opportunity to confront friction in your life with your own thoughts, friction with your beliefs and the beliefs of those around you, in your relationships and the patterns and the rhythms that you go through day after day. And so when you confront those and you work those out on the mat, then that can bring healing and resilience through each of those avenues and be an opportunity for you to cultivate a sense of self-awareness and of presence. The last day of this week is one where I experienced this quote that really brought a lot of perspective for me. Yoga does not change the way we see things. It transforms the person who sees. It brought me straight into this question. What challenges or obstacles do you encounter in your yoga practice, and how do you navigate through them? Being married is a transformative experience, and if it's right for you, I highly recommend it. I love my wife. It's a remarkable thing to go through life with a partner, and I tell you what, as soon as you have kids, you really understand the core essence of that partnership. And I really, hope and pray that we both survive this world and that we grow old together. And I love seeing old couples that have been together for decades, and they look so similar after sharing so much life together. So I don't know if you've noticed this, but they truly sometimes physically look similar. Like they take on physical characteristics after one another after being together. Sometimes they dress similar, they're shaped similar, they have similar hairstyles. And we can have a similar relationship with yoga that transforms us in fundamental ways, that we look different, that we, sound different, we smell different, we act different, we carry ourselves through our patterns day after day in a different way. And so here's 3 ways that yoga can be transformative in a way that challenges us in our yoga practice, how we navigate through some of those, the growing pains. And so the first one is through physical limitations. And this is the obvious one, modifying poses, using props, and honoring the body's limitation with compassion. And over time, that's going to transform who you are and how you're shaped and how you engage with the world. You're going to get out of bed differently. You're going to stand with a different posture. You're going to hold your hands in different ways. And so the next avenue after physical limitations is with mental distractions. And I've seen this start to really show up even just after 2 weeks of practice with this yoga routine and this challenge here. And so with mental distractions, it means bringing focus back to your breath first, and using a mantra or visualization techniques to practice patience. And so sometimes you have to really be patient with yourself. I found that, I talk about some areas of my physical self that are pretty tight and don't have the range of motion that they used to when I was younger. And so with bringing focus back to those distractions and I'm often distracted by the physical limitation and not paying attention to what's going on in my mind. My mind is easily taken away from the practice itself of yoga. So bringing focus back to the breath is the thing that helps me keep my mind from being distracted by my own physical limitations. And then the final one, which is truly my biggest challenge currently and the biggest realization after this second week of this yoga journey, would be my time constraints. And this is not unusual. I'm a father of 2. I have a full-time job and help running a company. Having an established, realistic routine. Now, that's the key phrase there. Waking up at 3:30 in the morning is not realistic for me, and it's not going to help me with my long-term health and success in any area of my life. But being able to carve even 20 to 30 minutes out before my kids wake up has become increasingly difficult over the past year or two. And so the time constraints, establishing a realistic routine, prioritizing that self-care, starting the day off right, and integrating shorter yoga practices into my daily life. This is the key right here. When I find myself with mental distractions, physical limitations, and I have 5 minutes to recenter myself, yoga has become, over the past couple weeks, a way for me to dive back into the practice even for 5 minutes. And, if it's 3 to 5 minutes that I've got, I know I have enough time to reset my physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual self to be ready to take on whatever the next challenges of the day. So what challenges or obstacles do I encounter in my yoga practice, and how do I navigate through them? That's the kind of question I want to ask for you. What are your physical, mental, and schedule constraints that you're experiencing in your yoga practice? And if you're traveling along with me through this journey at week 2, how do you think those will change over the next 2 weeks now that we're getting into the halfway point?